3,
Two,
2,
one.
1.
And we're live.
I know, you see, somehow the world will change for me and be so wonderful.
And
I want to die.
welcome to Spergonomics episode 2, guys. And as you can tell, we're literally, as the name suggests, Spurgs, singing iCarly, you bunch of Zoomers. Like, why?
Oh, I know. Gosh, I have a confession to make.
Yes.
So, remember the argument you had about Michael Bay
Yeah.
with that one guy?
Yeah.
That was me.
That was you. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, he
Fair
has
enough,
some
on
good
your
films.
Turtle
He's
account.
just consistently inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of his movies are just not very watchable. Like, I actually think Pearl Harbor is way too long and bloated, and not that
has
it's
a lot
Pearl
of-
Harbor has
but
other issues than it being too long.
Yeah, it's apparently Midway is good though, but that's not him.
yeah. I admit though, I actually like the Transformers movies. The first few, anyway. I actually
I
thought
have
were
the first one on DVD. I got it for Christmas. It was alright when I first watched it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah. What age were you when you watched it
Oh,
for
God.
the first time?
15, 16? When did it
15.
come
Okay,
out?
yeah.
Wait, let's have a look. When did it come
I
out?
watched the
2007.
one that came out in
2007.
2014 with my family because it was like a movie night and it was what was on TV at the time. And I was like,
Yeah,
who approved this?
I was 14 when I got it. Yeah.
Okay, 'cause I think that part of the reason I have a soft spot for the first two Transformers movies was because I watched them as like a preteen, and so for me, I think I was kind of right in the target age.
The second one had Linkin Park. Give me reason to
Oh, both
prove
of them
me
did.
wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, rest in peace,
dude.
Chester.
Yeah.
I still remember that song, New Divide, isn't it? Or New Line.
fuck.
Yeah.
What
was a
is
good
it? The
song.
first one is What I've Done. That's the one they have in the first movie. Then
Crawling
it's
in my crawl.
yeah. Then I think it's New Divide.
They will not crawl.
See, it's such a shame now because like the memes are great, but he actually did kill himself. So it's like the memes have a downer on them now.
Yeah.
No,
and it's
dude,
funny,
the memes shall immortalize Lincoln.
I mean, they have. Well, Chester. He was called Chester, but
yeah. And a lot of people thought that all their emo, sad boy stuff was just
that's funny because they
marketing,
weren't actually emo. They were new metal.
No, yeah, but like people think they had that kind of
yeah.
early 2000s teenage kind of vibe to them, and people just assumed they were pandering to teenagers. But no, he was a genuinely sad and troubled guy.
Yeah, he was genuinely just a mental wreck.
Yeah. And very talented, like a really good voice. Like I remember when I was in college, my history teacher, she was I guess you'd call her a boomer, a younger boomer. Even she saw them live. She said he had a brilliant voice. I'm like,
Chester, he did vocals for the Stone Temple Pilots on one of their tours.
Yeah.
And it was really good. I watched some of the videos online.
like Axl Rose in for AC/DC, he was great for them too. Strangely enough.
Oh yeah, he's perfect. He's perfect. I
he's
think
got
he's
the
a better
voice.
singer than their singer. Yeah.
Well, he's older now because I think in the 80s there wasn't much like splitting them apart. But I would say the original AC/DC singer is the best, Bon Scott.
Oh, you like him more? Yeah.
Bon Scott's better.
I like Guns N' Roses as a band better, so I guess maybe I'm biased there.
Yeah, they've got more about him. AC/DC, and I mean, I don't like to call them a one-trick pony, but you know what you get with them. You know?
Yeah. Whereas Guns N' Roses is a little bit more varied.
They
they
had
have their
a tour
big
with
ballads.
Metallica in 1992.
They had what, sorry?
Guns N' Roses and Metallica toured with each other in 1992.
Oh yeah. Oh, that'd be
peak.
a good concert.
That is high energy concert right there.
It was the start of Guns N' Roses being divas and being late, basically.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was a rocking tour when everything went to plan. Yeah. Although
yeah, because isn't Axl Rose like schizophrenic or something?
No,
like he has. So. Okay, I heard he was like really delusional and stuff, and that
it's
might
just
explain.
Fame will delude you.
Yeah.
Or just being left wing will do that too.
He's not low. He's not though. Funnily enough, Axl Rose is not a lefty.
Hey, in Chicago, when I was even before I was left wing, I was still delusional. How dare you?
But like I'm trying to think what other tours have been like that where you get. I mean, I guess there's Public Enemy and Anthrax, but that's at the same time as that, wasn't it?
Can we take a moment to talk about that dossier that came out about labor anti-Semitism.
Oh
I
yes,
love.
we will get into that. Don't worry.
I've
But we're
been
getting into it, guys.
Okay,
So,
okay, because I've been reading nothing but that for the past 2 days.
I've seen the summaries, and it's shocking.
Yeah, is that the thread like exposing all the incidents there's been?
It's a literal
Because I saw a
dossier.
lady do a thread
It's
on
an
it.
investigation, yeah. So what's
Yeah.
happened is, for literally about God knows how long it's been, probably since Corbyn first got into the
It
Labour
started when
Party.
Corbyn got in.
They've been accused of anti-Semitism. Now there was a few incidents before him. Ken Livingstone, when he was mayor of London, said things about the Jews, and he still does. Not very nice things, and or at least just stupid. But I think it comes from a cynical place. It seemed to ramp up, and people assumed, well, it could just be the right-wing press doing their thing, but then it kept going on and on and on, and even left-wing outlets started covering it, and then you hear more and more eyewitness testimony, and then they've had an investigation, they've had other investigations, and we've now found out that it's literally saturated in anti-Semitism.
I sent a link to the report. My favorite one is where there was an account where like two Labour Party members that met each other with like the first 3 minutes quickly agreed that the Jews were subhuman.
Yeah.
It was like, oh wow.
And you have to wonder what religion are they part of. But then again,
that's their religion.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long.
They discussed that after sacrificing the child to Moloch. So,
Do you guys know why? I mean, obviously, like, there's all these incidents that have been exposed. Now, I wasn't convinced of their anti-Semitism problem. I kind of thought it might have just been a smear, but I've actually grown to be convinced by all these new revelations. So
there's no smoke without fire, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty clear now, right? It's pretty established that they do have this problem. But why do you think that is? Like,
it's Corbyn. I think he's brought in people who are like that anyway, and he is himself like that. So
because like our party in Canada, our left wing party doesn't have this issue at all. Like they never talk about.
Well, I mean, the Green Party has a huge anti-Semitism problem.
Does it? Is that the Canadian one?
Yeah, the Canadian Green Party. Elizabeth May is just an awful human being. There was a Green Party member. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was kicked out of the NDP for being too anti-Israel.
Wow.
And the NDP is very anti-Israel. There's another guy who's a Holocaust denier, and I can't remember his name either.
It's just a combination. It's a combination of many things. So it's
also, the Green Party is just a cult surrounding Elizabeth May at this point.
To me,
and they're very marginal though. They're not like a big party. Yeah.
They got 2 new MPs though.
That's still marginal though, and they'll go back to
out of
anyway.
like 300 and something MPs. They're a small party.
So but anyway, I think there's several reasons why it's the way it is. There's obviously the cultural Marxist or just Marxist in general way of viewing things, which is it's a dualist way of viewing the world. So first it was the proles and the bourgeoisie, or then it was also the bourgeoisie and the aristocracy. Now, because it's more cultural, it's oppressor and oppressed. So, in their view, Israel is oppressing the Palestinians when it's obviously more complicated than that. Technically, they're not even in the same country. So
Palestinians aren't the same, don't at me.
But regardless, it's only logical that a lot of people would draw the conclusion that the Jews are subhuman and stuff like that when they keep getting bombarded with all this propaganda, and it's all one way.
Well, I was talking with a former Spanish teacher of mine about the anti-Semitism because he's very into politics, and I said to him, it's probably because anti-Semitism is a problem is either dismissed outright or treated as less problematic or severe or serious than other forms of racism, because the Jews are perceived as white. Well, they are white.
Some
right?
of them are.
So, yeah, some of them are. And you have this historical narrative where it's whites are oppressing blacks, which was true for a long time. But the Jews have also been oppressing their own right. So you have this dynamic of white oppressing black, and you just lump Jews into that, despite the fact that
it's everybody has oppressed everybody at some point. That's
and I think because on the left they have this understanding that if a group is doing badly, it has to be due to oppression. They have a hard time processing groups that are doing well despite the fact that they've been oppressed. So they might just assume that they're actually privileged in some way because
And let's not forget
goes with their narrative.
that sometimes this happens because they have no choice but to go down that route. Like, there's a reason why Jews are in Hollywood and Broadway, and that's not because they really had much of a choice initially.
Yeah. Like, these things are big parts of society now, but at a time, things like film were very kind of marginal in the traditional American
film
society.
didn't start off as they would say Jewish dominated.
It was Italian dominated, arguably,
Italian,
for a while.
Anglo, everybody. It's just that I think the big, like Carl Laemmle, who did Universal, was it? I think, or was he MGM?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like with the history of the Jewish people, like as the Jews as a group, they were just forced to do like scraps, like the shit people didn't want to do, like usury. They were forced into usury too.
Well, they weren't forced into it; they just could do it because it wasn't
Oh, yeah,
banned
they
for
were-
them. Because
Yeah,
they weren't
the job
Christian.
openings were there.
They were the only
Yeah.
ones that were allowed to do it within their own religious doctrines.
Until the king owed them money in interest.
The
but,
king opened
but the thing is, like I said in that tweet, did anybody see that tweet I made when I said usury has caused so many issues for thousands of years, it dwarfs even World War One and the French Revolution?
You mean Europeans not being allowed to practice usury, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
I think I saw
Christians
that
in
tweet.
general, like the Christians were not allowed in general. If they just bit the bullet and learnt basic economics,
all just usury in itself is just like bad or immoral or whatever. Well, you could just practice usury without being a massive dick to your lendees or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Because usually, like, if a friend lends you money, you might, when you give the money back, you might also like get them a beer or something, and like as a thanks for the favor. Like, that's a form of, like, a very informal kind of, interest, right? So there is a long, wide spectrum of it. Obviously, like, payday lenders are pretty predatory, but just the concept of interest is pretty sensible and totally necessary.
but like. And there's another thing as well, is the Christ killer stuff. So regardless if usury was allowed or not, because what was it, the Christ
killer.
What was the thing they said about economics? The just policy or something? I forgot. The just tax. I can't remember what it was called. But the Christ killer thing would have been a factor. But I think eventually that would have gone to the wayside because not really many people bring that up. Not even evangelicals bring that up, or even alt-righters. Really, they don't. Surprisingly.
It wasn't really the Jews who killed Jesus. It was like the Pharisees and then the Romans.
Well, the Pharisees were Jews. They were. That's just the name of that particular sect or class. But
The Pharisees were
Jesus was
literally
Jew,
just a
though.
priest class, so...
What I never got about the Jesus killer thing is like, well, technically he was a Jew. You know that, right? So,
Jew.
he was the king of kings. I don't know. It's
It
silly.
was king of the
Also, the Romans
Jews.
didn't like him preaching this whole equality.
Well, the Romans didn't really care for him, really. Like, if you actually read the story, like Pontius Pilate couldn't really give
Yeah,
a
Pontius
toss.
Pilate was like, "Why the fuck are you killing this dude?"
I know. He only did it because he's in charge, and they demanded him, and since he was the guy who had to distribute justice,
Mm-hmm.
so it had to be done. Basically, but yeah, I've often thought that anti-Semitism was based on envy anyway, mostly. And
Yeah, because you have this group that like for hundreds of years was just no matter what you did to them would succeed. And
I mean,
in the
some of
US
them it depended.
Yeah.
I mean, in Eastern Europe, they weren't a big success.
Yeah,
A lot
But,
of them
like,
were serfs. A lot of Jews in Russia were serfs. People forget that they weren't this rip-roaring success, and that's why
Yeah, and
probably
it's-
a lot of them were Bolsheviks.
but in the
Yeah,
U.S.
it's
they were
interesting.
very successful, and to a
It's
lesser
int-
extent Canada, I'd say.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to your point about how some Jews in some countries weren't very wealthy or educated at all. There's actually an interesting theory that part of the reason why when we think of the Holocaust, we think of German Jews, even though they were a tiny fraction of the Jews killed, is because they're the ones that could actually read and write and documented their experiences, even
Well,
though
the
the
ones who
vast
bothered
majority
to,
of Jews
yeah.
killed. The vast majority of Jews killed and who didn't have the resources to just leave or even really understand what was going on or going to happen were ones in Eastern Europe. And
Yeah, Elie Wiesel was writing about that. Like the community when somebody it's been a little while since I've read his book, but there was this dude in his community who came back and said, "Yeah, like these Nazi motherfuckers are just shooting and burning and doing all this shit to our people," and they're like, "Okay, fucking schizophrenic." And Elie Wiesel
Huh.
at first was one of these people, but then like he was like, well, he was kind of right.
Yeah.
By the way,
So
read Elie Wiesel's Night is an excellent book.
Send it to me.
yeah. So I don't mean to bring it back to the nausea of the 24-hour news cycle, but in the case of this labor,
Well, it's all connected. It's all connected.
yeah. So like in the case, but I'm just wondering because I don't actually live in the UK, and a couple of you guys do. How
Only Mitch
widespread
does.
is only Mitch does. Yeah, because I don't really talk to labor members. So how actually widespread among just like normie labor voters do you think this anti-Semitism thing
Most of them
is?
are disappointed, I would say. And if you look at that video that went viral, that guy quoting Corbyn's anti-Semitic. Well, one was Boris, but I don't think he was actually being anti-Semitic anyway. He is Jewish technically, but I think there was one quote that could be construed as it, which was from Boris. All the rest were literally anti-Semitic statements from Corbyn, and he said it all. He said all of them as if it was from Boris, but then told them actually it was Corbyn. I'd say 25% were like, this is in this video anyway.
Yeah.
25% were like, oh no, that's really bad. Actually, most said it was bad, but 25% of that
were like they just went all defensive mode.
Yeah, some of them said, well, it's bad, but I still vote Labour because they're better than the Tories, which is how could you vote for that?
Speaking of that shit, I saw on my timeline, Rose of Dawn retweeted something.
Mm-hmm.
It was a guy on I don't know what it was, but it was on a radio show or something, where he was like, there was a Labour Party person. He was like, yeah, I mean the Labour Party anti-Semitic. I abhor anti-Semitism and all forms of racism.
Well, they don't. They never have done. But anyway, then there was the.
Here comes the but.
Go on.
Then he said, but the Tory media is dominated by people of one particular faith. And I'm
didn't say that, did he?
Holy shit!
I don't even think that's true.
It's not.
Yeah.
Until Corbyn, I'm pretty sure it was fairly roughly even.
It's not.
Depended.
Well, isn't he suggesting that the Tory media is run by Jews?
Yes.
Like in that statement, yeah, that's crazy. Because what I find really weird about this anti-Semitism thing is that there's just not that many Jewish people in the UK. They're just not that prominent in public British life.
They don't even. They just keep to themselves and don't bother anybody. Most communities do that, but especially the Orthodox Jews, they just
all right,
keep to their families. They shop in the same shops as we do, but it's like
it's chat here if you want to see it.
You don't hear anything bad happening in those communities.
Yeah, they keep to themselves. Same here in the U.S.
I have no issue. I live near them. I have no issue with them. I actually kind of like them.
I live near an Orthodox Jewish school, actually.
I don't think I live near a school, but I live near the Orthodox community. I love them. They just, it's always nice seeing them. Like, oh look,
they're so cute. I don't really live near Jews. There aren't many Jews where I live.
But there's a video from The Guardian, though, I think it was years ago. Well, about 4 years ago, and it was in that area where I live near, and they're leaving, a lot of them, at least they were at the time, because of a rise of anti-Semitism. And it's kind of a shame, really, because they're like pillars of the community in many ways. Some of them.
I would guess based on what I've seen online. Again, I don't talk to a lot of normal everyday labor supporters 'cause I don't live in the country, but I would guess that a lot of these people that will acknowledge the anti-Semitism problem but still vote Labor have just
some will, some
have
won't.
just
It's kind of 50-50.
Yeah.
But then there's the rest of them.
I think a bunch of them are probably going to vote Lib Dem then if they really have a problem with it.
Currently,
wouldn't they?
Currently, the votes are kind of shifting in that area.
Yeah,
but what we're forgetting is that most of them, at least in that video, were making, were doing mental gymnastics and becoming temporary anti-Semites. Or some of them already were anyway. But there's one guy, he attacked Boris. As soon as he found out it was Corbyn, like, they do run everything. I'm like, what?
They are a major part of the capitalist class, It's like,
do you actually believe that bullshit? Like,
I think what you probably have going on with the people that think it's a problem but will vote Corbyn anyway is they probably just convince themselves that the Tories are just as bad or worse when it comes to racism and anti-Semitism. Like, I remember when Priti Patel, who I'm quite a fan of, was doing that speech where she said she'd end free movement and she's a daughter of immigrants and she doesn't need to be lectured by the North London metropolitan elite. You know, that was pretty based in my opinion. But a lot of people were calling her an anti-Semite, accusing her of dog whistling and stuff, which was obviously nonsense. But they do that. They do this mental gymnastics too to convince themselves that the Tory party's anti-Semitic. Like Glenn Greenwald's been saying that recently, but they never provide any evidence at all.
I mean, there's probably are elements, but when your leader is of Jewish and Turkish descent, like, that's not going to fly, is it?
Yeah.
Also, Disraeli,
the
first Jewish prime minister, was a conservative.
Well,
so,
only Jewish prime minister.
Yeah, well, he can't have been the only one.
Well, I mean, but discounting Boris, he's been the only other one.
There was another one.
Does Boris practice? Is he a practicing?
No. He's more Christian. I'd say he's Anglican.
Oh, okay.
Well,
yeah, he's probably.
He might not have a religion. But
I don't think he is.
He's culturally Anglican.
All right, let me look it up.
I would say he's probably Anglican, but he probably doesn't practice.
Yeah, he doesn't. None of the British politics seems pretty divorced from religion.
He says he considers himself a one-man melting pot, which is true. He actually is.
Yeah.
But there's nothing about his religion. I don't think he. Oh yeah, he was baptized Catholic, but confirmed into Church of England.
Fucking traitor.
But because he's British, he doesn't really mean much.
Yeah, Anglicans and Catholics are basically the same thing. Don't at me.
What I mean is like it's not expressed in the way that Americans would express it. You know. It's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's a fan of polytheism, like Greek and Roman polytheism, specifically the Greeks. He's like a Greek fan, while British is like he's a Romans fan. And there's actually a video of him and have you heard of Mary Beard, guys?
Nope.
She's a classical historian.
Yeah,
she's a feminist, but she's a really good historian regardless. Like I've read one of her books and it was very good, like one of the early ones. I've not read the newest stuff, but I assume it's as good as that. It was a debate on who's better, the Greeks or the Romans. Like, I mean, if you want a purely, I mean, in terms of creativity, the Greeks were better because the Romans basically borrowed most of the stuff they got from the Greeks. But in terms of like engineering and empire building and statecraft, I mean, the Romans beat the Greeks basically. Also, guys, before we get into any other things, Jim Jesus is in the chat. Now, we've been fighting each other for ages about. And me and Danny Deschamps have been fighting him over Die Hard. Now, is it a Christmas film, guys?
What is?
Die Hard.
Is Die Hard?
Yeah.
I've never seen Die Hard.
It's a Thanksgiving film. Changed my mind.
Ooh.
Wow. It's interesting because in terms of genre, it definitely is just more of an action movie because Christmas movies are almost like a genre in themselves. I know, which is tough because so often when you think of a Christmas movie, they all have like it's a movie with certain themes. It's like family, it's bits of comedy, it's feel good, yada yada. Whereas Die Hard is more like structured like an action movie.
But the thing is, strangely enough, when I look back at it, it's got a homely, snug feeling, like snuggly feeling.
It's
like
intimate,
Christmas,
yeah, that's true. It's like one guy in one building. It's and there are funny I see where you're coming from there.
Soundtrack.
I'd say it is. I watch it at Christmas. Probably like every other year. So,
the first time I watched it was Christmas time.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that Snape was the bad guy.
The Passion is a real Christmas movie.
Well, obviously, any like Bible film is a Christmas film, basically. Mitch, I only watched the classics.
If you're religious enough.
I've seen the Passion.
I've not seen the Passion, but I've watched like all the old ones. Like
it's all in Aramaic, isn't it?
That makes it's all in Aramaic, but that makes sense because you did not get the joke because it's about Jesus' death.
Okay.
So it's about Easter. It's an Easter film.
But like, I just love there's something about like the 20s to like 60s, early 60s, like sword and sandal, like Bible films. That I don't know. There's just the way they look is brilliant. Just like
you mean like Ben-Hur, Ten Commandments.
I mean, Ben-Hur is
movies?
both a silent film and a sound film. The silent film's probably bigger than the remake.
Oh right, yeah, because there was one from that was made in like the 20s or something, wasn't it? The silent.
I saw the
1920s,
original
yeah.
Phantom of the Opera. That was a weird one.
It's good though. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
No, another movie I watched in that same class I took in sophomore year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Casablanca, and Casablanca is still my favorite movie.
Funnily enough, the German guy in it, he was also a silent film star, and he's the guy who inspired the look of the Joker, the man who laughs. And he was in a film called, it was not the first horror film, but one of them. Like, at least you can say it's a surreal horror film because it's expressionist. It's called The Cabinet of Dr. Cagliari, I think it is. It has a twist ending. I don't know if it's the first twist ending, but it was one of the first like horror films to do it. And like, he was the main character in that. There's a few others in there as well. He died not long after that as well. Unfortunately, he escaped from Nazi Germany. I think Conrad Veidt was his name. Another good silent film is pretty much any of the ones from Cecil B. DeMille, who also did all the other Jesus films.
No, one of my other favorite films is A Godfather. I cannot fucking stop.
The Godfather. The massacred my boy. You see, I like gangster films, but I don't know. I've not got into the Godfather.
I'm not really into the gangster excited. I just like that movie.
I like
the Godfather.
I like a good gritty, gory western. That's why The Wild Bunch is my favorite.
Although I do have some good mafia stories because my grandfather had friends in the mafia, even though he was Italian.
Yeah.
If you want to share those.
Imagine never seeing
that
Die
sounds
Hard.
interesting. I think The Godfather is it's interesting to watch The Godfather and then watch Goodfellas because they're set during different eras, and it really shows you the way. If you watch The Godfather then Goodfellas, you really get to see the way that the mafia evolved. Because in The Godfather, it's a very different kind of organized crime. Like, there's actually an element of like chivalry to it, and order and manners and stuff, and even some morality. Whereas then you see Goodfellas, which is long after. Oops, sorry, my mic fell. Which is long after they decided they'd start dealing drugs and getting into because originally they were just basically doing gambling, but then you get to see kind of the before and after the mafia decided to go dark or whatever.
They were always into drugs and stuff like that because it was.
But some families were. Others were mostly into like gambling and
Capone
protection rackets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think cocaine was legal in the 20s, wasn't it? In America, maybe.
I don't know. I'd be a little surprised.
Freud was a massive coke head. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. No, okay. Here, I'll share one of my grandfather's mafia stories. So, for context, the St. Louis Mafia, is one of the bigger ones, even though it's not as well known as, say, Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York's. But it was still massively controlled the state of Missouri, specifically St. Louis and Kansas City. But my grandfather grew up near the Italian neighborhood in St. Louis, known as the Hill. And he had friends that he went to school with and stuff. But eventually they grew up, joined the mafia. What do you do? And one of his best friends got car bombed in the middle of a grocery store parking lot. Like, he was coming out of there, closed his door, and his car just blew up. In broad daylight, by the way. There was another one of his friends who was car bombed on Highway 55 that most St. Louisans who are boomers will recall. It was really big at the time because he was going down. I can't remember. He was going down South Highway 55. His car exploded. There was another story. My grandfather was an entrepreneur and he owned a tavern at the time. I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to get doxxed. But where the restaurant was controlled by a mafia family that wasn't his. That wasn't where his friends were. So when he was setting up the business and stuff, he was like, he was just in their territory. And when they came in and said, "Hey, pay our dues," because they did that, he said, he just said no, called his friends, and when he told me the story, he didn't go into any detail, but he just said they had a very quote strong meeting. And I said, "Did anybody die?" He said, "No comment." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." That's
you never rat anybody out, even
you don't.
Even your enemies. Crazy that. Like, you would think, right, that you would rat your enemies out because then that removes competition. Apparently they don't. They'd rather deal with it themselves. And interestingly, I actually oh god, I've got a story about the mafia in my town. Well, technically it's not my town where I live currently, but it's connected to Manchester. Like, what's a city in Canada or America that's like conjoined to another one?
Minneapolis,
You mean
St.
like
Paul.
you mean like
That's it.
something that's
So
in
Manchester is
Burlington,
connected.
Hamilton, I guess.
So Manchester's connected to another city called Salford, and I currently live in Salford, and there's a mafia in Salford. There's a big gang that controls everything, and so like, they literally had a godfather, and he actually worked with the police, as sometimes they do, don't they? And he basically kept everything ticking over and made sure that there wasn't anything too untoward, basically. But then he got assassinated, he got murdered, and then that's basically Salford's been like a ticking time bomb ever since. Everybody knows it's going to go down at some point if it's not already. And I actually was at a charity function which was hosted by a company I used to work for. It's like a chain of pubs, and I walked out, and then I was at the pub I worked at, which is literally down the road from where the charity gig was, because you know all chains, they have places very close by. He got shot up. He got shot up. Nobody died, thankfully, because it was kids on mopeds. But then also, I think around a similar time, one of the chefs got into a fight. After luckily it was after hours, you know, after his shift, so he wasn't sacked. But he got into a fight with the like nephew or grandson of that guy who got killed, and beat him up. Oh god, that's as close as I've ever got to the mafia, basically.
It's funny. I'm actually part Mediterranean, and I don't have any mafia stories from anyone.
I mean,
So,
I'm only a third party to everything, but not
Yeah.
too far away.
I mean, I'm part Japanese and I don't have any Yakuza stories for anyone. So
Apparently, there was a
You know,
traffic problem in Manchester for a while in the 80s.
I am originally from Toronto, though. There is a mafia in Toronto. I don't know how much they control per se. I know Toronto has a lot of like street gangs and stuff too, and other parts of Canada have a lot of biker gangs. But we do have a mafia scene here. Not a.
Oh,
I
I
don't know
mean,
if it's a.
We all had a
Chicago-
small Italian mafia.
in
I know
Chicago,
that.
the Russian mob still owns the taxis there. So
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use a taxi in Chicago then.
no,
an
man,
Uber.
just take the bus.
Safer.
Anyway, guys, should I do this? Shall we do this fascism test?
I already
Let's
took
do it.
I
Let's
got-
all
everybody
get
took it
banned
as
from the
well.
internet.
I think Jim Jesus would like this, and also British Knight and Chief Moody in the chat. They'd like this. Hello, Seg. How you, bruh? Anyway, this is a test that I found. Red Robot on Twitter, who's an old friend of mine, shared it, and I think it's getting around now actually. Because I saw Kikurio, he's like an old Gamergater. He posted it as well. So basically, it's like this intellectual quiz to say how fascist are you, and apparently it's agenda free as well as free of charge, historically accurate. So they've been looking into not just scholars and historians work on fascism, but also from the source itself, and they have statistical controls, and it's made by professionals, and basically it says how fascist you are.
Yeah, I got 19%.
But basically what that means is, I mean, all ideologies have overlap. So even if you come out at 10% or whatever, I mean, it's a given, right? You know. But I'm gonna do it, and ScotchOikos is gonna do it, and we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna do it.
I have
So-
to guess you're gonna be a little over a quarter fascist,
I
Mitch.
hope not, to be honest.
Scotch is gonna be 300% fascist.
300%.
Yeah, 305%.
Which is
Yeah,
still
that's my
social
guess.
democratic though in Canadian like politics.
It's
Yeah.
that's a bit of a claim. I'll
Oh
think
wait,
I'll
Scotch.
think about that.
Who did you vote for in the Canadian general election?
In the last one,
Yeah.
I wrote in Lee Kuan Yew.
Who the fuck is Lee Kuan Yew?
Lee
Oh,
Kuan Yew.
the first
Wow,
Singapore
who is Lee
president of
Kuan Yew?
Singapore?
Singapore,
He is-
you spoiled your ballot basically, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I hated all the options, so I wrote in Lee
Not Mad
Kuan Yew.
Max.
No, I didn't go for him because he was really he was
That's
kind of
who I
letting me
voted
down
for.
near the end.
No, fair enough.
I was open to the possibility, but he just by the end of it he just convinced me that he wasn't actually serious about this.
Mhm.
Who, Maxime
Um,
Bernier?
Yeah. And ultimately he lost his seat, so apparently the local
Yeah, he lost his own
Quebecers who
seat to
like
the
him agreed.
conservatives.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
he's
'Cause,
still
like,
the
the-
fastest growing party, so things might change in the future.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with them. They seem to really not have much of a like a cohesive message. He was kind of contradicting himself all the time. The media was
What he should have done?
getting him on all these.
He should have Canadian Libertarian Party, because the leader of that party said, "I'll step down if you like become the
Well,
leader of the
I think they
Libertarian."
merged. I think the People's Party and the Libertarian Party at the federal level merged. Because I know
Interesting.
the Libertarian Party basically just gave the People's Party their platform for their new website. No, obviously they revised it a bit, but I think they actually merged federally. They haven't in the province of Ontario though, because I don't even know if there is a provincial People's Party. So
So anyway, I'm gonna do this test. So me and ScotchOikos will do it. Do you want me to do it for you, Scotch, or are you gonna do it yourself?
actually, do you mind screen sharing? Just because I'm
I
doing this
will.
from my phone. So yeah.
In fact, I will probably try and do this on OBS as well. Hang on. Let me just.
Because there's a really
There we are.
wait, fuck. Is Ontario's premier still Doug Ford's brother or whatever? Rob Ford's brother, whatever the fuck.
Is that the one with the
Yeah,
cocaine
yeah, Doug
habit?
Ford.
By any chance?
Doug Ford. Doug Ford. Oh, I
Yeah.
like that guy.
Is that the guy with the cocaine habit? Or somebody else?
No, that was his brother. And I think Doug did deal drugs when he was younger for a bit. But he's Rob Ford's. He's the famous crack smoking mayor's brother.
Can you see that, lads?
Yes, I can.
Fair
So
enough.
does Doug Ford do anything? Has he done anything as premier?
Not a whole lot. He's kind of reshuffled. He's kind of shuffled some funding around, but he hasn't really done anything major. Which is basically the norm in Canada. All our parties are basically centrist, at least when it comes to economic stuff. They never really do anything.
Let's
So
do this.
unless they're scrambling to buy votes before an election.
Question 1.
Okay.
The mode of organisation employed by the military is an efficient one, and institutions like schools, the police, firefighters could generally benefit from adopting more of the military's practices and discipline. Now, see, this is a really open-ended question because
Holy shit, Mitch! Why the fuck do you have so many tabs open?
it's part of being a YouTuber, mate.
Welcome to Spergonomics.
Spergonomics. Now, luckily nobody can see my my mad tab game on on the stream. But like this isn't even. I wouldn't say this is fascist. Like you could be anybody and see benefits to military discipline to some extent.
I guess usually a thing they use to define one of the characteristics usually is
militarism.
strong militarism or military culture.
It's not.
Yeah.
The Soviets were very militarist as well. So
Yeah, I think
gonna
when you
stay in
like
the
put
middle.
it all together though.
I'm gonna stay in the middle.
Horseshoe theory.
Well, I'm going to stay in the middle because obviously there's some benefits but also disadvantages. In the
Oh,
end,
I put disagree.
I didn't disagree because I see benefits of both and also the bad side. Anyway, question
Well,
2.
they also lumped it in with like schools and firefighters. I was like, why the fuck do they need a military structure?
Well, firefighters in some way probably do need it in order to get shit done. Anyway, in the end, economic and technological strength cannot compete with the spiritual strength of the people that has faith in their country. World War One pretty much put an end to that. So, well, to be fair, I mean, people did last a very long time, but it wasn't necessarily a spiritual strength, but more just basic dogged human resolve, which could be spiritual. But I think it's just people are hardy. So I'm going to disagree with that. It clearly can compete, if not dominate it, I would say.
I love how laggy this is. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's Google Hangouts. Running a business
Yeah,
is
I know.
not very hard, and as a rule, the business owner doesn't possess any special skills that are not also possessed by his workers. Well, I disagree with that, because most
That's bullshit.
managers,
500.
most people who are CEOs, who are managers, are there for a reason, and that's because they're
Yeah,
bloody hard workers.
they're far more skilled than the guy who fucking flips patties.
Well, yeah, they're the ones who literally started doing that in the first place and worked their way up. Like that McDonald's CEO who had to resign because he had it wasn't an affair. They were literally just together. He was with a minion, wasn't he? A worker, and she was just his girlfriend, and apparently that wasn't allowed. So
I think when it comes to the question and being asked, it sort of depends on what the business is. Like obviously the average McDonald's worker can't do what the CEO does, but I think if it's like a very small business that isn't that hard to run, then I think probably a smart worker who's kind of learned the ropes might be able
Small
to.
business? No, most small businesses fail within a year.
yeah, It
Yeah,
takes a
but,
very
like, I
particular
don't think
set
that-
of personality traits to be a
Yeah, you need to be
be
a
a
very
leader.
particular kind of person to actually
Yeah.
be able to run a business.
So anyway,
Yeah.
question
My dad
like
would
I said,
know.
I think it depends on what it is, but
So question 3.
I agree. It's not the same skill set.
Question 3 is disagree for me. Question 4. People who seek happiness through money and material comfort will never achieve it. Some do, some don't. So I actually disagree. I think right now, in my current state, it would make me happy. And
Well, yeah, because you work retail.
because to me, all I want to be is well, not just that. I mean, even if I worked like just typical customer service, I would rather be more comfortable, which would like enable me to do other things other than get rich. So I disagree with that. I do understand it doesn't always make you happy. Money literally cannot buy you happiness, but it can provide the platform. I think if
You see, I would disagree because it's asked if money can buy happiness, which I
It doesn't
disagree
buy
with
you
that.
happiness.
However, it can buy the things that make you happy.
it provides the platform. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Question 5. The free market is the most efficient way of organising the economy. No, yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. One
Anyone
man or
who-
even a group of people cannot plan an economy. It's
Yeah.
impossible. Organisations like the
Obviously.
Freemasons and similar secret lodges cannot be trusted since they have their own agendas. It's literally a place for boomers, and it always has been.
7 of my friends are actually Freemasons.
What are the,
The individual is
Dude.
more important than the state,
okay,
obviously.
join the Freemasons. Tell us what they do.
It's just a...
It's
they
sort
do
of just
weird
every
rituals
month they.
and-
Well, it's
It's a
basically
sorority.
just a gentleman's club,
yeah,
really.
gentleman's club.
I know.
It's basically a frat house, but for boomers.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Same with United Columbus. They're for Catholic boomers.
I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't understand what power they have. I mean, there's like Masonic
They
halls
don't-
and stuff, but like,
I was just shit
I
posting.
don't know. A plurality of political parties is necessary to ensure that no one circle of individuals gets too complacent in power. I agree, but that's only in a democracy, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't
Like,
exactly.
if you're in
know
a
what
monarchy,
political
you would
parties in,
need
like, an
you would
authoritarian
need
state.
strong advisors who can rein in the king, which is not always easy.
The king.
The king. Question
king.
9 of 28.
The cane and shit.
There are no universal ethics. What is true and good for one people may be false and bad for another. Well, I slightly disagree with that because the golden rule seems to be a thing that literally every culture on the face of the earth agrees with.
Yeah.
So there is universal ethics, but then obviously there are things that are obviously true and good for one people that are false and bad for another. So I'm gonna slightly
The
disagree.
reason why Botswana is succeeding and Zimbabwe is not, so
The individual cannot really claim any rights against the state, since it is the state that grants him these rights in the first place.
That's a fucking lie.
how do you
Yeah.
say shut the fuck up, fascist?
Well, if
or-
you read your Hobbes and you read your Locke and Hume and whatever, actually the state purely exists to protect the rights. It doesn't grant the rights.
Mhm.
The
I
rights
don't
But if
think
rights
Locke
can't be
says
protected, they
that-
don't really exist absent the state's ability to enforce them.
Well,
then they're
it's
just
like
sort of these
you enter a covenant,
abstract
don't
things
you?
in the ether.
Yeah.
And then Leviathan is formed, and that's meant to guarantee it, right?
See, my definition of natural rights is rights that you can give yourself if you are stranded on a desert island. Like, you can own property without anyone helping, so that's a natural right.
You can think as
You
you
can live. That's a natural right.
Yeah, but, like the scenarios we live in aren't just like us on an island with our like, volleyball or whatever. Like it's like we live in the context of like communities, and unless there's some kind of apparatus like a state that can defend your rights, other people could just like say no, you can't have property, to steal your property.
Yeah, that's
Well,
the
I
purpose.
Or I
obviously
could
just
just have
disagree
a
with this
firearm
anyway,
and
because-
defend my property that way. I don't need a
obviously
state to
disagree
defend
with
it.
this anyway, because I do believe in some kind of natural law. So
Yeah.
let's have a look. Politicians have a responsibility not to upset the traditional ways of communities that live according to their time-honoured customs, values, and creeds. Well, usually, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Like if it's a good tradition, but if it's a bad tradition, then they need to get
Yeah, it really depends on the tradition.
Yeah. Like,
It's like,
for
I mean,
example, the British getting rid of, is it Sati, where the Hindus would, not all Hindus, it depends on the sect, but it was a very widespread practice of burning widows after a man died. So, they would burn the widow of the husband, kind of like how the some like ancient Egyptian practices, they would leave people they would kill people after a person died and put them in there so they could go to the afterlife.
also
Obviously, that
slavery.
had to go.
Yeah, like slavery had to go too.
Because India's actually not, it's not barbaric, but that is a barbaric practice, so that had to go. I agree with that.
Circumcision, get rid of it, ban it.
I mean, they would have done the same thing to us if there was something barbaric that we do. So
Yeah, I say America conquers Europe so we can make European soccer fans stop fighting each other at games.
we don't
Get rid
really.
of the barbaric practice.
But anyway, I disagree with that slightly. Only slightly. A person who has nothing to hide, has nothing to fear from government surveillance. I disagree with that entirely, because they're always spying on you. Democracy is dangerous to competent statecraft because it forces every political decision to be lowered to a level of stupidity that the masses can understand. I mean, kind of, but it's not, I don't think that necessarily makes it dangerous. I think what could make it potentially dangerous is I think Aristotle noted this, that when it works well, but then it's also a very easy path to tyranny.
Well, so is monarchy.
Yeah,
So.
monarchy too. But monarchy's more of a dice throw, whereas democracies can be very easily overthrown because the masses are easily swayed. Basically, I slightly disagree with that.
Yeah,
I know what it's trying to
abolish all
say. I know what it's trying to say, but I don't think that's a problem, because if you understand what you're trying to say, then I don't think that's bad. I don't know.
I mean, it's fine.
Most people are stupid anyway. Like,
every once in a while, a country needs a good civil war, so it's fine.
I mean, most people are stupid anyway. So what good would it do in any system, really? I mean, no offense to stupid people. I mean, it's what George Carlin said. The average person's pretty stupid, but most people are stupider than that. If a state is to protect the freedom of its citizens in the long run, the state itself must be free to make controversial or unlawful decisions when necessary. You see, I think sometimes that is necessary, but with the caveat, like, they have to immediately give back to the law. They have to then return to the rule of law. So, like, say you're in war, there's a state of war, right, and you're being invaded. Obviously, habeas corpus or whatever would have to be rescinded if things were that bad.
You're not really a country until you've had a proper civil war. Don't at me.
Obviously, like for example, Pierre Trudeau, he did that, didn't he, to defeat the terrorists, but he then gave back power to the proper authorities.
Yeah, he did.
And also Sulla, he did the same thing in the first Roman Civil War. He was dictator
and Lincoln
for a year.
Lincoln sent troops into the Maryland State Assembly to prevent them from voting to secede from the Union, and then declared martial law in the entire state and in D.C.
And then it was rescinded after the Civil War, I assume.
Well, yeah, mainly because he died.
I know it sounds bad and statist to a lot of libertarians, but I'm only being pragmatic. I would not want this to be the norm. Like it says, when necessary. And that should be absolutely the last resort, I think. Maybe, I know that sounds bad, and I don't like that, but I'm just being pragmatic. God, that sounds so bad. Question 15. If the people hasn't accomplished much throughout the course of its history, that tells you something about the worth of the people. Not really. It just tells me that they've not advanced much yet.
Yeah, I had this argument with an alt-writer on Sauron's Discord server a few months ago, and he was just like, well, yeah, but no Africans have created any great civilizations.
Well, that's not true.
At
Zulus,
Mali Empire.
Benin, Mali.
At Mali Empire.
Technically, Egypt is an African. So it's not really. It's Mediterranean.
Oh yeah,
it's
but
in Africa.
When we told him Egypt, he was like, well, Egypt is really Mediterranean. It's like, okay, Mali
was basically Hellenized for a while.
Yeah, mainly because of the one guy who converted to Christianity. I forget his name.
The Nubians were actually pharaohs for about 100 years. So there were black ancient Egyptians technically, but they're the Nubians, as I've always said.
But we was Kangs.
Technically, but not really.
So you're saying we wasn't Kangs?
Technically, but not really.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up the Zulus.
I did.
Well, I'm talking about Altazai in his argument.
It was,
You know,
it was.
Yeah.
I mean, Chaka Zulu basically came up with the same idea as the Romans when it came to military organization. Young guys at the front, most experienced at the back, and then
there's also Abyssinia, who literally fucked up Italy in the 1880s.
And then almost beat them again in the 30s.
Yeah.
So
They even almost got involved in World War I in the 1910s.
The economic losses from worker strikes and employee lockouts are just too massive to allow market forces to sort things out by themselves. Yet they do. Always. So I disagree with that. All people are essentially worth the same, no matter their race, gender, nationality, or IQ. Well, maybe on the individual level, it's different. But as groups, I don't know. I don't think that matters. Like, are black people?
Well, it's talking about individuals, not groups. So.
Well, it says all people, so groups and stuff. I don't know. It's individual. Like, the CEO is more important than the work. Well, actually, no. Well, you could argue the worker's more important than the CEO. You could argue the customer is the most important thing in the business. It's subjective. It's a stupid question. This, I don't like it.
I mean, I would agree that the customer is probably the most
But what's
important aspect
worth?
of the business.
Do we mean making money, intelligence, creativity? What, like? Because I don't care. Fuck people. Fuck people. You're all equally worthless to me. I'm joking. When it comes down to it, politics is mostly about the distribution of money, materials, and resources. People's values and religion are just icing on the cake. That's a very Marxist take on it.
Guys, I have to apologize swiftly. I can't believe I haven't done this yet.
What? What have you not done?
Mario Superstar Baseball.
So what do you think, guys? Because I'm stuck on this one. People's values and religion.
I think that it is correct.
Yeah, I guess
that all people are worth the same. Because you cannot have a business without the CEO, workers, and customers at the same time.
I put it in the middle because it's like, well, depends on your point of view. You know, a certain point of view, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I'm on 18 now, so when it comes down to it, politics is mostly about the distribution of money, materials, and resources. People's values and religion are just icing on the cake, which I disagree. I think it's all of that. That's just Marxist drivel to me.
I actually agree with that, I think.
It's not entirely down to money and materials and resources.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but like I think that's just the main factor.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Warfare is the only state that truly shows you what a given people is made of. Well, it certainly shows you what the warrior class is capable of. But it depends on the war. I mean, is it a total war? Is it a limited war? Is it an old-fashioned war, like tribal war? I disagree. I don't think it does. There are other ways of showing what a people is made of.
Yeah.
Ethics is a matter of statecraft.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, what do you? I mean, the Belgians haven't been really good at war, but damn, do they make good food?
But like war can often
Belgians
just come down to numbers.
Like it, by the way,
like war often comes. The problem with war, like using warfare, is that it can often just come down to numbers, so it doesn't tell you like how great they are on like a per capita basis. Like you can have an awesome small country like my mic fell again. Sorry. You can have an awesome small country like Belgium, and it's probably going to lose like every war it enters with Germany. It doesn't mean Germany's a better country per se.
It never got conquered by Germany.
No. Well, yeah, but that was a big alliance. I mean, like today, if Belgium as like a little country were to go to war,
Germany failed
with Germany or something.
Well, they failed to beat Belgium in that tiny little slither that they held. They just couldn't get through him.
Didn't they bring out like these massive guns and
that was to beat the initial forts? But once they broke out of those forts, the Belgians basically checked them for the remainder of the war. I mean, yeah, the French, and the British helped, but they never fully conquered them because it was a very small front, and they were stretched thin anyway. And the Schlieffen Plan failed. Basically.
I mean, and also, I mean, the Irish the same way. The Irish have made many contributions to history, but we're fucking.
Anyway, we've got 20 now, and then we've got to hurry up with Scotch because we're pressing for time. So, ethics is a matter of statecraft. Whatever furthers the interest of the state is good. Whatever inhibits it, it's bad. No, disagree with that. And we all know the reasons why. The struggle between rich and poor, between capital owners and labourers, is more significant driver of history than the struggle between nations. I disagree with that, actually. I really do. I think that's only been a thing, really, since Marx, I would say. Because what people forget, especially like in feudal times and maybe in the Renaissance, it was many different alliances between different stratas of people. So the king could ally with the peasants, or the peasants could ally with the nobles, and vice versa, to attack one other group or person, whatever. So so I disagree with that. It depends.
You even see that today. Like neoliberalism is arguably an alliance between like wealthy people in the first world and poor people in the third world against kind of it's an alliance that goes against like the middle class, working class in the first world.
Yeah,
so
very true, yeah.
I think that's even true today.
Politically speaking, the state is a second order consequence. The derived effects of a people laying claim to their homelands of launching there. I mean, yeah, that's literally how the state develops. People move to this land, they settle the land after they've become hunter-gatherers. They might get conquered, or they conquer, and then eventually they form into a confederation, to a kingdom, then to a state. So I guess that's just basics.
We've had countries before that technically don't have a coercive state, though.
Well, it's not saying it's coercive. It's just saying this is how the state is a second order consequence. So,
then how would you define a state?
Well, no, it's just saying that it's derived from the effect of people laying claim to land.
Again, though, you would have to go and define what a state is.
I think that's probably getting a bit too, pedantic. I know what they're trying to say here, and I think I agree with that, actually. I mean, it seems logical.
I've actually disagreed with that. Because my definition of a state basically is the monopoly on coercive force, which there have been countries before which don't have those monopolies.
But I was
thinking, and they work just fine.
But I'm thinking it's more about formulation, and I think that's pretty much how most of them, if not all of them, form.
Yeah.
Because you need a group of people to have a state, and they need an area to govern. So that's how I see it. I'm not seeing it as strictly philosophical.
I mean, you're treating it as if it's like a chicken and the egg question, Chicago, and it really isn't.
That's not what I treat it as. I just thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. So if you consumer goods and increase, I mean, even Fukuyama says that. So if you consumer goods and an increase in living standards as ends in themselves, it's a sign of moral corruption and decadence. But they do increase living standards. Literally, the Soviet Union collapsed partly because it didn't have a consumer base. And didn't have.
We're so degenerate that we actually have decent living standards.
I know, right? Disagree.
God, we're so awful, dude. We're such a degenerates. God, we have wealthy citizens. Fuck this, dude.
We have an obesity epidemic.
We can afford food. Oh, fuck.
The honour and worth of the people is proportional with the contributions it has made to global civilization. If a people has not contributed much, it is of little worth. Honour is more than just contribution. Like, I disagree. Also, that's way too collectivist of a mindset. Yeah. I mean, like, everybody contributes, and honour is more than just your contribution. You could be a peasant in Japan and still have a lot of honour. So, It's not logical or efficient to have several companies all making the same tyre, the same wrench, the same cable. So the state should step in to coordinate their efforts. Well, no. Because what if this one tyre is from this company, is made with this particular material that I want?
Yeah, not all fucking companies make the same quality products.
Yeah, it's not all the same. That's all the bollocks.
Yeah, there's something called competition.
Bruh. Classical liberalism is essentially an ideology of the past and the modern attempts to reinstate it, aka neoliberalism. are bound to lead to wars. Except it hasn't.
And classical liberalism and neoliberalism are very different things. So
how many questions are there out of curiosity?
28. We're near the end.
Oh, okay, that's not too bad.
Well, that's all the bollocks anyway. Because I mean, yeah, I guess the Revolutionary Wars could have been, you could argue, were caused by classical liberalism, but then it was caused by the extreme wing of it, which is Rousseau and Voltaire and stuff like that. Their ideas, and they're forgetting that the most classical liberal
the American Revolution? No, the American Revolution was caused by the more moderate wing, the Lockeans. The French Revolution was the radical wing.
That's what I was saying. Rousseau and Voltaire and
you accidentally said American Revolution. At least that's what I heard.
I said French. I'm pretty sure I said French.
Yeah, I think you said American. I think you said American, but I thought I could tell you were talking about the French.
I meant to say French. More. If I did say that, but
I was thinking, sure, Thomas Paine was full of himself, but
Thomas Paine was an anarchist, but that's about as extreme as you get.
But it was the British who were the most classical liberal country after America that were against the French, in alliance with absolutist states. But it was us that basically de-radicalized them in a way. So that was the only war really about that ideology. I mean, there was the revolutions of 1848. And 1839? 1848 by then was already beginning to be socialist.
Well, no, there were two sets. You had 1830 and 1848. The 1830 revolutions. You had
that's it,
the French and the Belgians a revolt. And 1848, fucking everybody revolted.
Apart from in Britain.
And the Netherlands.
Yeah. Because we were already liberal.
Dutch
monarchies. So the political challenge today... the political challenges of today are so serious that they can no longer be solved with the traditional paradigms of political thought. I agree with that, and that's not... You don't have to be any kind of ideology to agree with that. I think the culture war destroyed the traditional left-right axis. Or they can argue the axis was destroyed long ago anyway, but it's very clearly dead now. I do agree with that. People, this is the last one, people shouldn't be allowed to spread dangerous political beliefs or ridicule those with whom they disagree without the permission of the proper authorities. Nah.
Fucking what?
Fuck off.
Imagine having to ask permission to criticize people.
I'm 25%. I knew it. Didn't I guess
it? Wow. Congrats, Mitch. You're 1% more fascist than me.
Scotch.
The thing is, what I share is like common sense stuff that everybody would agree with. So they're not even fascist principles what I agreed with. It was like universal stuff.
Yeah, like every country would be fascist. It would be like 25% fascist.
So here we
are.
While your political outlook may share a few or even quite a few fascism's fundamental doctrines, well, I wouldn't say they were fascism's fundamental doctrines that I agreed with. I would say that they were stuff that a communist could agree with, a liberal could agree with, a socialist or whatever.
Yeah, basically it's anyone who's not like a full anarchist,
and,
really.
Like, when I was being pragmatic, I wasn't being fascist. I was just like, well, yeah, sometimes you have to make drastic decisions that might be unlawful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing I'll probably get, based on the questions, I'll probably get higher. But
now, you may find this result unsurprising, but in reality, most people have at least some points of agreement. Since it really is a mix of communism, socialism, conservatism, and liberalism, with a few innovations of its own. Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah.
Hence, adjusting for these factors, even though your fascism percentage might seem quite high, there's really nothing surprising about these agreements when viewed in their proper historical context. So rest assured, political beliefs are definitely not fascist. So really what it should be is you agree with certain things that are universal. Yeah. Alright, so you ready, Scotch? Do you want me to do it for you?
I am, yeah. Yeah, do you want to just ask me the question? With a lot of them, I've actually already thought of my answer. But and as for the slider, I'll just say, like, when it comes to where you place the slider, I'll just say neutral, somewhat agree, which would be like halfway between neutral
left,
and
right, so I know
all the way
to turn. Yeah.
Okay, is right yes, and
right
left no.
Is like totally agree. Left is totally disagree. Center left is slightly disagree.
Okay, so right's agree and left is disagree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
Are you just gonna rapid fire through this shit?
Yeah, we're gonna rapid fire it as much as we can because we've already been talking about it. So the struggle between rich and poor, between capital owners and labourers, is a more significant driver of history than the struggle between nations. Whoops, sorry.
Center left.
Center left. Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a brief reason why?
Because I think that there is a bit of the conflict there, but when you look at the history of conflicts, it's overwhelmingly more like driven by nationalism as opposed to class conflict. Like when you look at like the bulk of like what's created the bodies, it's not Marxian conflict really. You might have some of those tensions in society, but I think that other things are.
But before that, it was like families fighting each other. With the
it's more about it's more nationalistic in nature.
It was literally just aristocrats fighting and other aristocrats for most of history.
They were like the people who would be enemies of nationalism as well.
Yeah, be it like localized or internal civil conflicts or bigger national ones. It seems to more be driven by like some sense of tribalism that's a more kind of nationalist identity, cultural level, or just like raw fighting for power by the more elite strata. I don't have the Marxist view.
Politicians have a responsibility not to upset the traditional ways of communities that live according to their time-honored customs, values, and creeds.
I would say center-left again, like a bit of a disagreement, because I don't want the government to just be like treading on everyone, but I also live near some Mennonites, and man, is it not a good scene. So I would like them to...
What's wrong with the Mennonites?
Pardon?
What are the Mennonites doing that you don't like?
The Mennonites are basically bringing up their children in the 7th century, and I don't think that's good for them.
You sure that's not the Amish?
No, it's the Old Order Mennonites. The New Order Mennonites are totally different, but the Old Order ones are basically Amish.
Do they?
I was about to say because you're talking with one, buddy.
What?
You're talking with one, bud, and I don't recall growing up in the 7th century.
Like a new, are you an Old Order Mennonite? Do you like have a?
I am a Mennonite.
Dress? Yeah, but are you a New Order or an Old Order one? Do you wear like the hat and reject technology and stuff? Because those are the ones that I'm talking about.
Sorry. Well, he won't be here if he did reject.
I think not.
Wait. Are the New Order what you would call the fancy Dutch?
The fancy Dutch.
No, I never heard that term. They usually just call themselves New Order, and you can't tell they're Mennonite.
No,
okay, well,
maybe we should.
New Order is basically we look like average Protestants.
Yeah, so that would be New Order. Like I'm thinking the ones that are like the Amish that use horse and buggies and don't. Yeah,
we don't look like we're basically like Amish LARPers.
I would say we should just move on. So
I'd say center disagree on that.
What on number 2 was it? So we're on 3.
Yeah, on like I think the I somewhat disagree that the government shouldn't infringe on traditional communities.
So we've got the mode of organisation employed by the military is an efficient one, and institutions like schools, the police, and firefighters could generally benefit from adopting more of the military's practices and discipline.
I'm going to say somewhat disagree again for that one, so center-left, because I get that there are some aspects of the military that should be in those other institutions, but I think like a lot of them are already there. Like I certainly don't think firefighters need to become more like the military or even schools. I don't think they need to be more like it, you know? So, yeah, I'd say somewhat disagree.
The individual is more important than the state.
I'd say center agree. I mean, it's tough to state because, like, when they ask about the state, do they literally just mean, like, government bureaucrats, or do they mean, like, the state as some representative of the public? Because my opinion would change based on the definition. Like, if it's the individual is more important than, like, the literal government, I would say absolutely. But if it's a question of, is the individual more important than the public, I'm more mixed on that. So I'd say put me as, like, center disagree.
All right.
Or center. Well, how is it framed again? Sorry.
It's hang on a sec. I'm going way back. The individual is just more important than the state. That's literally what it is. It's just
okay. So center agree then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People shouldn't be allowed to spread dangerous political beliefs or ridicule those with whom they disagree.
Yeah, I strongly disagree with this one. Mm-hmm. People should be able to voice any political opinions they want.
Democracy is dangerous to competent statecraft because it forces every political decision to be lowered to a level of stupidity that the masses can understand.
Somewhat agree.
Mm-hmm. To view consumer goods an increase in living standards as ends in themselves is a sign of moral corruption and decadence.
somewhat disagree. Like, I don't think it's degenerate to have high living standards, but I think that endlessly pursuing them. I mean, actually, I don't know, because like I don't think it's a. I mean, that's generally how I view the world. So I just say just straight up disagree with that.
Right.
It's a
I mean,
sign of decadence.
they say that, but then traps come into the equation and everything changes.
Traps are a moral good.
I mean, just look at the alt-right, they can't get enough of them.
Yeah.
If a state is to protect the freedom of its citizens in the long run, the state itself must be free to make controversial or unlawful decisions when necessary.
I'd somewhat agree with that, because I think like during times of war and stuff, you can't just have this like constrained libertarian state. You are going to need to bend the rules and everything, and if you don't, you'll get subsumed by an aggressive, usually imperialist, usually authoritarian power.
Indeed.
So,
Yeah.
somewhat agree.
In the end, economic and technological strength cannot compete with the spiritual strength of the people that has faith in their country.
I somewhat disagree. I don't fully disagree, because there have been instances where the technologically weaker power or side ends up winning, usually out of
like the
usually out
Ethiopians
of
and the Italians.
well, I'm thinking of actually like recent examples, like even in like Vietnam and stuff, the
That was more
Americans ended up
tactics,
losing
really.
despite vastly better technology.
I mean,
And it was largely just because the Vietnamese were just more willing to die for
but ultimately,
die for
though,
their cause.
the technological gulf wasn't that big. I mean, yeah, the Vietnamese
It was pretty big. You had like the
only in
Americans
terms
had
of
aerial
air
power.
Yeah, only in terms of air power, but they still used almost pretty much the same level
Yeah,
of
I
small
mean, the
arms
Soviets
But
and
the
the
air power is a
Chinese gave
pretty
them
big deal.
they gave them their guns,
Yeah,
and they weren't.
Yeah,
that
but the
far
air
behind.
power is a huge
but that's
factor in
it.
that.
But that just proves that air power can't win you a war. Boots on
It
the
doesn't,
ground.
no, but I think, well, that's what I was saying. It doesn't win you the war, and the Americans lost the war ultimately. So that's why I somewhat disagree. That how was the question framed again? It was asking, it was saying that technology itself can't overcome the will of the
I
people.
think it can, though. I think
So
an economic strength. I think it does. I think more often than not.
I mean, yeah, you also have the
That's why-
example
well,
of the North versus South in the Civil War. I mean, the South was willing to just fucking kill everybody, but like
but
the
they
North
lost.
was just so much more industrially advanced and had such a
Yeah,
higher
so that's
population.
why I somewhat disagree,
Yeah, okay.
because I think technology generally does win you the war, but there's been instances where there's been less common instances where the will of a people, usually if they're more invested in what's going on, it does give an edge. So I somewhat disagree that technology can be overcome.
Question 10. Classical liberalism is essentially an ideology of the past, and the modern attempts to reinstate it, aka neoliberalism, are bound to lead to wars. There's
I
really
disagree.
bad structure as well to that.
I disagree, because like free trade and stuff tends to, economic nationalism tends to create more wars than free trade, and so I disagree this
Fully
wholeheartedly.
disagree, right?
Yeah.
Organisations like the Freemasons and similar secret lodges cannot be trusted since they have their own
I
agendas.
mean, like, would I trust them to run a country? No, but I don't give a fuck what they do. Like, I don't think they're relevant. So I don't even know how to answer that question.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Knights of Columbus did give money to the Catholic rebels in the Cristero War. So
I mean, I don't trust them, but I also don't think they control the world. Like,
So is that a
no, they
disagree?
don't. They do not control the world.
yeah. So I mean, I think they're trying to get at here. Like, they're trying to get at fascists who think that these are like Jewish organizations controlling everything, and but I don't believe that. But I also don't think I wouldn't trust them. Like,
So is that slightly
with
disagree
running
or fully disagree?
I guess I'd say slightly. I'd say somewhat agree that they can't be trusted. I mean, but I don't think. I mean, just put me neutral in this one,
Neutral,
honestly.
right.
Yeah.
Warfare is the only state that truly shows you. Warfare is the only state that truly shows you what a given people is made of.
I strongly disagree here, because, like I was saying, so a lot of it can just come down to numbers. Really, it doesn't say anything about what the people are like on a per capita basis.
All people are essentially worth the same, no matter their race, gender, nationality, or IQ.
I agree that all those things listed shouldn't be variables, and how not even IQ should be a variable in how good they are to determine.
Anyway.
Because, I mean, in the case of IQ, you have some really high IQ people that use it for destructive ends or who just are pretty lazy, right? And you have some low IQ people that are honorable and productive. And so I would say for this one, I would say that I somewhat agree that people are equal irrespective of those variables.
I was neutral because like I was thinking too pedantically about it, so I thought, you know what, whatever, you know.
Yeah, because I don't think every single person is equal to each other, but I think what it's trying to get at there is, are these things important?
Should they be treated differently?
I don't really think so. No. I that's why I put it as neutral. Like, you're all equally worthless to me, you know. As a joke, but like I do think, like, you know, I don't care. I don't know.
Yeah, so some would agree they're all equal.
Yeah. Well, I don't even care about any of those things anyway. It doesn't concern me.
Yeah.
People who seek happiness through money and material comfort will never achieve it.
It really depends on the person, honestly. I'd say some would agree because there's been studies that show that once you are basically middle class, beyond that, money doesn't correlate well with your happiness. So I somewhat agree.
So what was that? Sorry, somewhat agree or somewhat
disagree? Somewhat agree that chasing money doesn't make you happy, because I think there's enough data on that. Like, for some people, it'll make them happy, but for most people, it doesn't really seem to.
Yeah, the political challenges of today are so serious that they can no longer be solved within the traditional paradigms of political thought. Because I agree with that. I think
I do think I agree with that.
I don't agree with the fascist thing, which is the third position. Like, you're not a third position. I don't even think there's a fourth position. It's I guess it's like that meme, you know, with the different stages of enlightenment. It's like that, basically. You know?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I somewhat agree with that. Like, I don't think we need like a fascist alternative, but I also think that this endless 24-hour news cycle, culture war, like, I don't think this is very productive. So I do think we need to change it and move beyond right and left as well, because I think they're old, outdated modes, and increasingly will be as we have new technology and cultural norms. So somewhat agree.
Ethics is a matter of statecraft. Whatever furthers the interest of the state is good. Whatever inhibits it is bad.
Oh, I strongly disagree with that. Not because I'm like a libertarian or anti-state person, but I don't think the state's inherently good. I think that's a really weird view.
I don't think it's inherently good. Depends who's running it.
Yeah, exactly.
People or one person, you know.
Like, I don't want to advance the state that is the USSR or Nazi Germany, right?
The individual.
Fucking statist. Free!
Jim Jesus is in the chat as well. He should have been saying that as well. Statist. Actually, some of these more ethical questions he was mentioning on Twitter actually today, because I don't know if anybody's heard of him. Esoteric Entity. You heard of him?
No.
Haven't you ranted to me about him like twice now?
I didn't rant about him. I find him fascinating as a person. I find him funny. I don't rant about him though. But no, basically he's like this well-known. I guess he's a lolcow to not just non-libertarians, but even libertarians think he's a joke. And he did a video. What was it called? Let me just find it, guys. Esoteric Entity. It's called Why Ethics Matter, and the thumbnail is Nihilism is Tyranny. And he goes into ethics and stuff like that, and Jim Jesus was refuting it on Twitter. So, like, if we bring him on, which I'd like to do, he could get into that a little bit. So anyway, the individual cannot really claim any rights against the state, since it is the state that grants him these rights in the first place.
Well, I agree that it's ultimately the state that makes any of these rights meaningful, but I disagree that the individual can't, like, what was the first part? The individual can't claim rights against claim rights against the state. I it's weird. I agree with the second part, but not the first part. Like, the point of the state is to basically allow individuals to do that. So put me as neutral on this one, just because I think there's two questions there. So
true. The honour and worth of the people is proportional with the contributions it has made to global civilization. If the people has not contributed much, it is of little worth.
No, I disagree with that. Like, let's say somewhat disagree, because there is a point to be made about, like, contribution and how valuable your human capital is, but like, just the forces of history are so complicated that it would just be really unfair to, like, judge a people based on how much they've exported to the world.
Yeah, they might end up increasing that proportion. You never know.
Yeah, and there's ups and downs, and it's hard to know.
A plurality of political parties is necessary to ensure that no one circle of individuals gets too complacent in power.
I would somewhat agree with that, actually. That it is best to have a multiple different parties, just because it gives people choice, but it also does include accountability. And because if you have a parliamentary system and you only have two parties, basically what you're going to have is, like, just, once a party's in power, it's basically a dictatorship. Like, they can just do whatever they want. So yeah, I agree. I'd just say 100% agree that the plurality of parties is better.
When it comes down to it, politics is mostly about the distribution of money, materials, and resources. A people's values and religion are just icing on the cake.
I agree that the bottom line of policy is distribution of resources, but I don't think that's really how people practice politics. I think, in fact, a lot of people vote on the culture war issues. So I'd say somewhat disagree with that.
I think it's only really a socialist or a fascist thing when it comes to money, materials, and resources. I mean, they are materialists for a reason, I guess. Dialectic materialists.
Yeah, well, are fascists really? I mean, communists are materialists, but are fascists really materialists? Because they do have a strong spiritual streak in them.
Because of the economic side of it is not. It's hardly any different to communism and socialism. It's from the same branch of the tree. Like, if you look at the manifesto. It's literally redistributive as opposed to.
I think it's usually can be driven by different impulses.
They're certainly not free
used
market,
for different ends. But yeah, I mean, and a lot of fascist regimes have kind of opted to keep institutions private, but they're not really private because the state can just tell them to do whatever. When the state says jump, they have to say how high. So
what they mean by privatization is not the same as what we mean by privatization, which is
privatization, when we talk about it in the modern day, means, like, we want them private so the state can't tell them what to do. Whereas with the Nazis, it was
the thing is, the main difference between, I think, the fascists and, like, the and the left, so socialists and communists and whatever, is that, like, they aren't necessarily for, like, workers cooperatives. They allow, like, to a certain extent, private business to exist. They just want that to serve the state.
Well, they actually have co-ops. It's syndicates, at least in Italy. And,
oh, really?
And the Nazis had one big labour union. I forgot its name. But yeah, they just coalesced all the unions into one big one. But I forgot. It was Deutsche whatever. I don't.
And when there's one big one consolidated, it's easier for them to control. So that was probably the motivation there.
And everyone was a part of it, basically. So anyway, here's 21. The free market is the most efficient way of organising the economy known to man.
I strongly agree, and I think Karl Marx actually agreed with that too. He didn't think the efficiency was enough, but he said, like, capitalism is super efficient. He had a theory that it creates so much, it creates more than can be consumed, and so ultimately you have these recession cycles, which modern economists don't believe in. But no, I don't think many people contest that it's super efficient. So I'd say, I'd change that to somewhat agree, because as a general rule, yes, but there's been exceptions. Like in South Korea, the state was more heavy-handed, and they saw huge growth. And
yeah, same with Norway. Norway nationalized its oil industry. And
that's so I also somewhat agree.
And also, unlike Venezuela, it actually managed the money responsibly.
Yeah,
like. Well, that's because they're still capitalist. That's the thing. Like, they nationalized that area, but everything else was not. So there's that.
But it's still nationalizing an industry at the end of the day.
Like Britain, I don't think we did. I think it's BP and whoever. They own their own little rigs, and we're doing just fine as it is with our oil. Politically speaking, the state is a second.
Wait, hold on. Wait. Does that mean the BBC is socialist? If the BBC is a nationally owned company,
no, I meant oil.
socialist?
BP. British
Wait a minute.
Weren't Royal Dutch Shell and BP both at one point operated by the British government
Maybe
in a capacity?
In the 50s, I don't know. But I know that I'm pretty sure that oil in this country is not nationalised. Positive. Politically speaking, the state is a second-order consequence, the derived effect of a people laying claim to their homelands and flourishing there.
I agree. I mean, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. So I just say strongly agree with that.
Time. Like, you can have a country, but it isn't a state, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, like state formation is it's literally a human construct. It's something that we have because we either consciously or subconsciously decided to do it.
It's a bureaucracy to help run things, and China was the first state.
Yeah, it's not like there's a bureaucracy that just like pops.
What about the Babylonians?
Gathers a bunch of people.
No, not in the modern sense. The first modern state was China, about 1,000, 2,000 years after the Babylonians, something like that. What you can say is a modern state. It was China, and then after that, it was probably the English. Politically speaking, the state. Oh, so you agree with that? Is that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I agree.
I don't see any reason not to really. I mean, I've just triggered a huge discussion there, but just put me at agree.
A person has nothing to hide. There's nothing to fear from the government.
This is where I'm going to say I somewhat disagree here because obviously you can have nefarious governments trying to comb over somebody's life to destroy them. But there is a bit of truth that usually whenever there is some kind of new surveillance thing, it's usually like the sketchier people that get the most freaked out. Usually. Especially if you're talking about the general population, people that aren't that ideological, it's usually sketchier people that panic. So I'm going to say somewhat disagree.
I mean, I would still panic because I'm just hyper, principled.
Yeah, but you're you're not the average person. You think about politics in the abstract. The average person who gets freaked out about it probably does.
Well, also keep this on the down low. I do lit up some of the Mary Jane every once in a while, and I don't want the government raiding my house for that
anytime now.
Oh God, you're such a naughty boy.
Yeah, I'm just so naughty, dude.
Well, in my country, that's not even an issue anymore.
Well, to be fair, it's there's a ballot in my state going on in 2020 whether it should be legalized.
Oh wait, you could vote.
I could vote it. I'm gonna vote on it next year. Obviously,
you can vote for legalization. I forgot. There are no universal ethics. What is true and good for one people may be false and bad for another.
Somewhat disagree. I think, like you said, there's the golden rule, and even a lot of religious teachings are quite similar to each other.
I say it's both. There's universal ethics and there are subjective ethics.
Yeah, so I'd say somewhat disagree. Like I think what it's posing is too absolute. It's making people's needs sound just too disparate.
I don't want to get into a big debate because we don't have much time, but it's not the same as morals though. Of course, objective morality. Yeah. So I don't think there is an objective morality though. But
no, I agree with that. I think that what we kind of see as objective morality is just a practical thing. It's like what most people agree with and what kind of lets society run.
So the economic losses from worker strikes and employer lockouts are just too massive to allow market forces to sort these things out by themselves.
So I know you agreed, but I think what it's saying here is that
no, I disagreed. I disagree with this.
Oh, you disagreed. Yeah. Oh, okay. No, yeah, I disagree with that. I don't think the state needs to come in and crush labor strikes. I think
unless they start rioting, maybe. But
unless they're literally trying to overthrow the government or something. So I strongly disagree with this. I think a lot of countries have private sector unions in the market.
We've had in the 70s, Britain had some of the biggest strikes it's ever had, and the market sorted it out anyway.
A lot of those were public sector.
Yeah, they were public sector
strikes, though.
Yeah.
So that's not even a situation with the market per se. I think this is specifically talking about private sector ones.
If a people hasn't accomplished much throughout the course of its history, that tells you something about the worth of that people. I thought that was bullshit.
This is where I'm going to say somewhat disagree. I mean, I don't know, because I don't think it tells you how high quality they're what they are as human beings, but. I think there maybe is something to be said about maybe there were certain cultures that were more valuable, but then again it comes and goes. There's high points and low points for most civilizations, and also there's just luck too. Like
Yeah,
you can
because the
have
thing
good
is, it's like
civilizations that can't trade or don't have
if it
certain
were for
resources
their
available.
geographic location, the Dutch wouldn't have been nearly as powerful as they were. So
Yeah, exactly. Like it matters a lot if you're on the water and can be a naval power, and like so I'd just say I'd say somewhere between somewhat and fully disagree. So like if you just put the slider somewhere in that area, it'd probably be
Somewhat
accurate.
bring back the
Was it?
VOC.
Somewhat was it? Or
Be like, is there if there's a point in the slider that's between like the somewhat and fully disagree point, I'd just say put it
no,
there.
it's just disagree, somewhat disagree, then neutral. Yeah.
There's
Okay,
no
I'd
gray
say
area.
somewhat disagree.
Okay.
Scott.
It's not logical or efficient to have several companies all making the same tyre, the same wrench, the same cable, etc. So the state should step in to coordinate their efforts.
Strongly disagree. I mean, insofar as that would happen, I think it would be put to an end pretty quick. Like people would figure out which one is the best at doing so.
I mean,
like
they're
you know,
not actually
a
the
PlayStation.
same, in it anyway.
Like yeah, like a PlayStation's not the same as an Xbox. Tires are different. Like there's little
Technically,
variations.
one PlayStation from another PlayStation isn't the same because some of them
Yeah,
break
there's
earlier than others.
that's true. That's true.
Like my PlayStation
But I think
2's still going, and it's nearly 20 years old.
geez, yeah, because I know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably not a Slim then. I know the Slims used to break
I've
all
got
the time
big,
because they didn't have
fat,
fans.
beefy OG.
Oh yeah, my GameCube still runs perfectly fine.
Oh yeah, the GameCubes were great. Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't have I lost my power cord when my house flooded, so I can't really use it. But
Yeah,
whenever somebody brings a power cord, I always ask them to like use my GameCube so I can play it every once in a while.
But yeah, Mitch put strongly disagree
I
for
did,
that one if
yeah.
you haven't.
Just
Yeah,
checking.
all right.
Yes, I did. Running a business is not very hard, and as a rule, the business owner doesn't possess any special skills that are not also possessed by his workers.
I'm gonna say somewhat disagree. I know I disagree with you guys a bit here, but I think it depends on the business. Like, there are some instances,
I
like
think we all
some
agreed
small
with that,
businesses,
I think,
like.
didn't we? It depends on the business.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say somewhat disagree instead of fully because there's some where like the average worker absolutely couldn't, but there's others where, in some cases, the average worker is actually managing a lot. So what?
You're 34% fascist. You're a fellow traveller.
Oh, it came out.
Yeah.
Oh, that was it. Oh, I thought we were like still 5 questions away.
I struggle. I thought you would be the same as me.
34.
Holy shit!
But what did I answer though? That was so.
Unless I made a mistake.
I don't think unless I don't think I answered anything particularly.
No, you didn't. That's a mistake either from me or the test.
There might have been like you might have gotten one of the questions because some of the questions like are posed in a way like we're agree disagree. I might have just said the wrong one.
Matter.
But yeah, 30. I mean 30. Also, I was answering a lot of somewhat yes, somewhat no. I was giving a lot of somewhat answers. I think your answers were often like a little bit more resolute. Like you would be more like fully agree, fully disagree.
So like I got only 19%.
Yeah, so
it doesn't really mean anything anyway. I would say
no. I mean, no, I don't.
You're not 30.
I don't think it's probably not that inaccurate. Like I'm not a libertarian. I agree with them on a lot of things, but that's more as like a means as opposed to an end. So
speaking of libertarians, another person I want to get on the stream is Stephen Michael Davis sometime.
Oh yeah, he's great. I've done 2
great.
streams with him, and yeah,
I'll have to check that
I
out.
always love it when you two chat. When are you guys gonna do that again?
yeah. We actually, I think we were DMing about it, doing another chat sometime, but we just
Anyway.
need to like pick a subject.
I'm going to read this out and then we'll probably end the stream. So,
After we read the Scotch, I want you to finish your thoughts on neoliberalism that you were talking about before the stream. Before Mitch
like
cut us off.
when we were talking about the difference between neocons and neoliberals.
Yeah, I was really interested to hear those thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's actually an interesting thing because I was talking with
let's let Mitch read first. Whatever.
Oh
he
yeah,
wants to read.
sure.
in your case, it would appear that your political outlook shares more than a few of the core doctrines of fascism, since fascism is really a mix of blah 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 blah. You said that. It's scarcely surprising, blah 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 blah. Even after adjusting for these parameters, however, it would seem that the commonalities between your political outlook and fascism are not merely incidental, but arise from certain overall themes, concerns and solutions which your personal outlook has in common with fascism. While you are most likely not a fascist, the overlap between your preferred society and that of fascism is simply too significant to be pure chance. Well, I think it is pure chance in this case. And I may have made a mistake in some of the things.
Yeah, like let's assume you made like one serious mistake and that the real number is like 31 or 32 or something. But like,
it's probably
well, to be fair, Scotch, who was the one that said you were gonna get 39%? They were actually fairly close.
That was me. I was being maybe a little uncharitable to myself, but I said that.
So anyway, what you guys wanted to talk about?
Oh yeah, the difference between neoconservatism and neoliberalism.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at a lot of neocons and neolibs online, they're kind of saying the same things. Like it's right these days. It's usually like Trump bad, Putin bad, trade good, these tariffs are bad. Like, you know, they tend to say the same things, but there are core differences in their ideology. Like what I think a neoliberal kind of is. Now, obviously, different people use it in different ways. For some people, they think like Sweden's neoliberal, you know, because they have a free market despite a big welfare state. Some people just use it kind of interchangeably with like a globalist libertarian. But
I heard I was on the neoliberal subreddit. I regularly browse it.
Yeah.
But there was a comment I saw a few months ago where it said where somebody asked their thoughts on libertarians, and they said, we tend to like libertarians, but the thing is, if you want to describe neoliberalism, it's libertarians who recognize market failure. And I was like, I've never heard a better explanation than that.
Wait, they said libertarians recognize market failure? Or
no, they said they are libertarians who recognize market failure.
Okay.
It's like oversimplification.
Yeah, that's.
Would you agree with that?
Maybe. I mean, I think neoliberals are probably. I think the difference we're talking libertarians. I think the difference between a libertarian and a neoliberal is ultimately in their kind of motivation or values. So where I'm actually much more like a neoliberal. I view market freedom and individual freedom as more of like a means to an end and not as like an absolute first principle. Like a libertarian, I think, is motivated primarily as like they're motivated primarily by like maximizing freedom for its own sake, like it's an inherent good. Whereas I think neoliberals are probably less absolute about it because they view freedom more as like a tool, and sometimes a tool isn't going to solve every problem. So
yeah, they see it as a tool for prosperity. Libertarians are just like, this is inherently morally good or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the main difference. And if you're talking about the difference between neocons and neoliberals, they're similar in that neocons don't believe in freedom as the ultimate end. They use that rhetoric, but I have neocon friends that have actually told me privately, like, that's just advertising. Basically, that's not really what they believe. They just kind of evoke this like American language of liberty and stuff to usually promote global American hegemony. But I think the key difference between a neoliberal and a neocon is that neocons generally have a more antagonistic view of politics. Neoliberals tend to just kind of want to make friendly with everyone, and they think that if they make friendly with everyone, there won't be conflict anymore. Like if everyone can just trade, if everyone can just get along, and they usually think that's within grasp. Whereas I think the difference with the neocons is that they have a worldview that very clearly delineates enemies, and they're willing to be much more aggressive with their enemies. So I think a good example would be...
I think neoliberals are still very pro-interventionist, though, in a lot of cases.
Not as much. Like, if you talk to actual neocons, like, a lot of them are in favor of basically going to war with Iran and stuff, whereas most neoliberals aren't quite like that. They aren't against... I guess the difference between neoliberals and most libertarians is that neoliberals aren't ideologically opposed to intervention, whereas libertarians are, because they view it as like this big state action.
Well, no, there are some libertarians who are for an aggressive foreign policy, like Stephen Michael Davis. Stephen Michael, actually, yes, Davis is really. If you see his Twitter timeline, he's very like, wants like a strong position against Russia. He's like very pro-NATO.
He does, but he's not. I wouldn't say he is, but he's not a
typical
war hawk.
No, he is not.
He's pro-Pax Americana. Like, he basically has my view, I think, on foreign policy.
My thing is just like, you know, I used to describe myself as anti-war, but then I started like looking at different interventions America has done, and I was like, well, I'm not really against a war. I'm just selectively like, it's very much depends on what the war is for. Like,
yeah, that's like me.
Like, basically, like any like most proxy wars for the Cold War, I would be in favor of. Like, not gonna lie, Vietnam War, I would have been for that back in the day.
Well,
And
that's
even
one
now,
that we look back on and we think, oh, it went badly. But I mean, I think a lot of people, if they were around at the time, would have been for it because
yeah.
we don't want
I mean,
communism
hell,
to
to be
spread.
fair, now I would have been for it now. Like even what we're knowing now, I would just have probably done a few things differently. But even
I can't say that much because I mean, ultimately, it was a lot for nothing. Now, maybe if you did key things differently, it could have gone better. But it's hard to say that. We know how it went.
But you also have examples like the Korean War, which I think the Korean War absolutely was a good thing.
Oh yeah, we created one of the best countries on earth.
It took a little while to get there because Sigmund Rhee was kind of a dick. It took a few coups, but eventually we got there.
Yeah, exactly. And if it not for that, all those people would currently be living under a North Korean style regime. So
yeah.
So but I think ultimately the difference between neoliberals and neocons really does come down to their foreign policy views and their views of like hostile countries. Neoliberals tend to just kind of want to make friends with them, like make friends with Iran instead of fighting them, whereas neocons really just want to take the fight to them. I've also noticed that a lot of and this is maybe their biggest difference, a lot of neoliberals are multilateralists. So
I do not know what that is.
Oh, that basically means that action should be taken in the world collectively, either through like UN decisions or NATO decisions or what have you. Like a neoliberal, if they were going to launch a military intervention, they would want to make sure they have this big alliance, that they have approval from the international community and all this. Whereas a neocon would just be like, fuck it. We're going to go in alone. Who cares what the UN says? It's controlled by,
I hate to interrupt, but I must be going now, guys. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, wait. When you end the call, does that mean the call ends for good?
The call will end. Well, if I leave the hangout, it probably won't. But I need to end the stream regardless.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So anyway,
I was gonna say, if you need to leave the call, let me and Scotch talk here. We have something good going here.
Check if Discord is working. If not, I'll just go on Hangouts, video call, and just send each other the link, and it'll be fine anyway. If I don't think it will end if I leave.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, guys, this has been Spergonomics, the rip-off of Unpopular Opinions, the place where spurginess and pedantry reign supreme, for a short amount of time, anyway. Anyway, it's been your boy. And today
the other
with me,
boys.
Chicago left without
Chicago. Yeah, well, we still have one Midwesterner in here.
He disappeared.
I mean, I'm arguably a Midwesterner. I'm from.
Shut the fuck up.
Literally
from it. You're a Canadian.
Shut the fuck up, Canuck.
Alkazai, last words.
I don't know. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, and the Vietnam War was a good thing.
ScotchOikos.
Thanks for having me on, Mitch. I don't really know what to say, to be honest.
You're welcome. Don't worry about
Just
it.
be edgy. Like
As
me.
for the rest of you,
yeah, all my opinions are would get you banned from YouTube, so I can't say them.
The opinions of ScotchOikos do not reflect the opinions of the Spergonomics podcast. Now, anyway, as for the rest of you lot, get out.